Welcome, you guys, to a session all about good old posture, right? And posture, for those who attended the talk I did last week, it's all about how you carry yourself, okay, and how your body is aligned, and looking for correct alignment. So the session today is literally some nice practical movements and stretches and things that will help just to keep your body able to maintain alignment. Okay, so because it's not easy, gravity is not our friend. Gravity is pressing down on us every second of the day, whether we're seated, standing, laying. So we're fighting gravity. So we've got to work at posture. I'm afraid it doesn't come. No one has natural posture. You've got to work at it. So I've actually got just a little range of exercises and some hints and tips again for just trying to maintain good posture. So what is good posture then? So from a standing point of view, again, just reminding those who went to the session last week, it's about a neutral alignment. So your head is above your shoulders effectively. So you haven't got your head forward or haven't got your head back. It's literally in line with your body. Your shoulders are back, and your ribs are slightly raised. And actually, you've got that helps to create that nice little hollow in the lower part of your spine, that little S shape at the bottom, and then a neutral pelvis. So it's not tilted forward and it's not tilted back, so you've got a flat back. And if you're standing, then feet shoulder width apart, with the weight going through your heels or all the balls of your feet effectively. So one way to test, as I did this talk the other day, as to whether what does good posture feel like from a standing perspective? Just use a wall. So just get your bottom against the wall, heels about an inch or so away from the wall, and just touch your shoulder blades and the back of your shoulders onto the wall. Make sure your head is in line with your body. That's kind of good posture. Now, I talked about pelvic alignment. How do you know whether you've got a tilted forward pelvis or possibly a tilted backwards pelvis, causing a flat back? So the test we did was just slide your hand in between the wall and your back. You should just be able to fit a palm, one hand flat against the wall behind your spine. If there's a big gap, then you've got what's called a lordotic spine. Your pelvis is tilted too far forward, which is very common in pregnancy, because obviously people who are carrying a little bit of excess weight on the front, because gravity obviously works that you've got to carry that weight on the front, so therefore your pelvis tilts forward and you lean backwards a little bit to counterbalance the weight. So that would tell you, a big gap there would tell you that you've got a lordotic spine and you're leaning forward, leaning backwards a little bit too much. If you can't get your hand in there at all, then you've got what's called a flat back. So your pelvis is actually tilted a little bit backwards. So you haven't got that kind of natural little curve. So that's just a good little test to keep trying out every so often. Just check yourself and your alignment as to how you're going. So all the exercises I'm going to do today just help you and your body maintain a good alignment. Now, the first thing I would always recommend is keeping the core engaged. You've heard that phrase many, many times, I'm sure, but what does it really mean? And throughout the whole session today, I'm going to be working on keeping this engaged the whole time. So whether I'm standing, laying on the floor, whatever, I'm going to be doing what I'm just about to demonstrate. So what it feels like to engage your core is you're pulling your belly button back into your spine, okay? And almost it feels like your abdominals are going back up under your ribs a little bit. That's kind of what it should feel like. And a true core engagement also involves the muscles that stop you going to wee. Right? So if you were to stop mid-flow, then that's also core engagement, because the core muscles are right at the bottom of the pelvis as well. So throughout the session, let's try, whether you're sitting or as I am standing, let's try and make sure that belly button is pulled back in, that the core is tight, and actually we're engaging those pelvic floor muscles as well. Cool. So that's the first thing. Now, in order to help you do that, because actually that's muscle control, so these muscles need conditioning as much as anything else. So there is a bit more of an extreme exercise you can do that gives these muscles a bit more strength. They're called vacuums, and it's a bit of an exaggerated pulling in of your tummy. So if you imagine that someone is kind of sucking all the air out of your middle, you've literally got to pull your abs back into your spine as hard as you possibly can. Hold on to it, hold on to it, hold it back 10 seconds, just hold on to it. It's quite hard to do, because actually the more you're pulling in, the harder it is to maintain it. And then sort of relax, but not totally relax. And then just give yourself a couple of seconds. And then again, vacuum, pull those abs right back in and right back in under your ribs. Really pull it in hard. Holding. It's harder than you think. And then let it go. Doing that 5 or 6 times, a few times a day. You talk about core muscles and core engagement, doesn't get much better than that, you know. So simple little exercise that you can do. Vacuums. It's not about vacuuming the house, or even if you are vacuuming the house, quite frankly, then you could be doing vacuums while you're doing it as well. But the other really simple thing is actually just standing really tall. Okay. So what I mean by that is people think they're kind of standing up straight. So shoulders back would be one part. But then actually lifting the ribs high. Yeah, so automatically you then created that more natural S shape with the back. So in order to help do that, I'm going to touch the ceiling now, a good stretch to do is literally stand as tall as you possibly can and actually stretch up as high as you possibly can. It feels like you're actually trying to reach outside your own body almost. It's a real kind of extreme stretch, and then relax. And again, reaching up high, because what doesn't happen very often is the vertebrae separating. Gravity pushes down and actually pushes them together. What this helps to do is actually, particularly for thoracic vertebrae, which are the vertebrae that run in line with your ribs, then actually that exercise really helps to just stretch them out a little bit and just takes the pressure off the vertebral discs. So a really nice one to do that just acts against gravity and just takes a bit of pressure off. So again, just standing tall, hold that for about 5 to 10 seconds each time, 3 or 4 times each time, absolutely spot on. Helps to really, expand the spine. Okay, next one. We're going to actually work sort of neck down from now on, really. So spine alignment. So that spine is the pillar of our body, our skeleton. Its alignment is key. So the next few stretches and things I'm going to do are really about aligning the skeleton and aligning the spine more than anything else. So let's start with the neck. So literally we're just going to turn our heads out to the side. Don't go too far round. Just hold. Again, keeping this core pulled in nice and tight, ribs nice and high. And then you rotate round to the other side. Again, just hold, don't go too far. Now what you might hear is a little bit of crunching and cracking while your neck rotates. So go back the other way. And actually, as long as it's not painful, that's a good thing. Because what that means is, and try to go a little bit further this time than you did the first time in this direction. Back the other way. And back to the centre again. What's happening with that is actually as the vertebrae rotate around each other, they're just realigning. So the bit of the crunching and cracking you hear is just your vertebral bones just realigning themselves. Because when you've got your neck forward, watching those texts and looking at your phone and what have we, they're all out of position. So a good simple movement like that is just enough to help get them realigned again. Okay, so Um, Focusing around the shoulder area then still, because the shoulders are connected by these big trapezius muscles here that run along the top of the shoulders back here as well, and they're also the big muscles that help to actually pull your shoulders backwards. Okay, so we're actually going to do an exaggerated shoulder rotation and then a kind of a shoulder blade grip. Let's do the rotations first. So we're literally just going to do massive shoulder shrugs, but in a circle. Imagine you've got a pencil on top of your shoulder. You're just trying to create or draw the biggest circle you possibly can. Again, keeping the core pulled in as tight as you possibly can. About 5 or 6 rotations in one direction. And then we're going to go the other direction. And it's a real exaggeration. At the back of the movement, you're really trying to pinch the shoulder blades together. At the top, you're really trying to get your shoulders up by your ears. And when you're going forward, you're trying to pinch your pecs together at the front. So it's a real exaggerated kind of shoulder movement. Give that a shake out. Now again, all that helps to do really is just relieve tension and pressure in your neck, and it conditions those muscles a little bit more, because it's not a normal position you get into every day, is it? You know, how often do you lift your shoulders up or do rotations like that to lift your rib cage up? So shoulder rotations and shrugs is a good one. Now the next one, I've called it kind of gripping the ball. So I want you to imagine you've got a tennis ball and it's right in between your shoulder blades. And I want you to grip as hard as you can. So squeeze your shoulder blades together. So you're lifting your ribs quite high, you're pulling your shoulder blades together, and you're kind of squeezing a tennis ball. That's what it should feel like in between your shoulder blades. All right, and just hold it, hold for about 10 seconds or so. Just relax and shake it off. Then we're going to do the same thing again. So shoulders up and backwards. Really pinch those shoulder blades together. Quite a hard, because these are really strong muscles, the trapezius muscles and the rhomboids behind the shoulders. And shake it off. Okay, good. Again, not only helps to expand the chest and get the ribs a bit higher, which is a good position for posture, it's actually strengthening those core muscles or the key muscles at the back of the neck to actually be able to sustain that kind of position. So that's really good. Okay, so now in the talk last week, I talked about a kyphotic spine, which is someone who's got a bit of a hunchback or leans forward, round-shouldered, if you like. So one of the things that helps to counteract that is the exercise we've just done. But part of the reason people have rounded shoulders is not because they're just looking at their phones down here or whatever. It's actually they're just too tight in the chest. Right? These muscles are these are quite powerful muscles too. So unless they're actually able to stretch, you're never actually going to be able to get your shoulders back and round anyway. So the next stretch we're going to do is just a simple stretch to just help you be able to flex and expand the rib cage a bit more, pectoral muscles. So you do need a bit of wall space for this one, so sorry if you haven't got a wall very handy. So you're going to stand side onto the wall, and you're going to put your hand with your fingers pointing away behind you. Okay, so palm flat on the wall, fingers pointing behind you, and then what you're going to do is you're going to actually just turn away from the wall. So you should feel that in a number of places. Firstly, right across the chest and the front of the shoulders, because you've kept that hand nice and flat and you're really stretching out that whole area there. You should feel it a bit down the bicep and the forearm as well, because the hand's in a bit of an unnatural position. So it's actually a good stretch for a number of reasons, but primarily we're doing it for the chest. Okay, so again, hold it for about 10 seconds. Let's change arms. And a good test of this exercise is because it's doing each arm independently, you can kind of see whether you've got one side that's less flexible than the other or more flexible than the other. Now really you should be able to turn at least halfway outwards away from the wall. If you can't, then obviously that's a great exercise to be working on. So again, relax that one off.
Well, I'm quite a lot of my forearm, Martin.
Yes, yep. So that's another good reason to be doing it, Dom, in the sense that actually that might be an area of tension for you, because again, how often do you have your hands in that kind of backward position? On the contrary, most of the time, our hands are forward. So actually, yes, it might be a limiting factor. So the other way to do it, Dom, if that's a limiting how much you can stretch your chest, is find a doorway and actually put your arm or hand flat on the side of the door, and then just kind of walk forward. Yeah. So you're getting the same kind of stretch really, but without the limitation of the forearm. Okay. And again, repeat the other side. Again, staying nice and upright, keeping the ribs nice and high, accentuates the stretch, holding for about 10 seconds. Yeah, really, really good exercise to do. Not many people actually stretch out that area of the body very much. So a really nice one to do, and totally helps to counteract the round-shouldered piece. Okay, if you combine that with the gripping the ball shoulder blades movement as well. Okay, so really straightforward, simple exercises, don't require a lot of effort. But very, very effective. Now, another shoulder stroke chest stretch I'm going to do requires us to get down on the floor actually. We've done this one in circuit training, Dom, a number of times, downward dog. So this one appears in yoga a lot, and for very good reason, because it's all about flexibility. But the reason this particular exercise is very good for posture is because it really helps to stretch out the thoracic part of the spine. Okay, so again, the vertebrae that run along inside the rib cage. So we're going to do it in a kneeling position actually, rather than standing. So you're going to put your hands flat on the floor, about shoulder width apart, and all you're going to do is bring your head down in between your shoulders as hard as you can. Again, keeping the core nicely engaged. Hold it for a good 10 seconds or so, then relax it off. And we're going to do the same thing again. So again, see if you can go a little bit further. You really sit back on your haunches as much as you can.
Is the aim to try and sort of get your bum to your heels, or
yes,
is that not?
Ideally, yes. If you're more flexible than me, Kirsty, yes.
I'm not necessarily saying I am.
But yes, absolutely. Cool, relax it off. Now, again, the other reason that's a good exercise is because in the way that we did the standing tall, it also helps to separate the vertebrae a little bit. It takes some of the pressure off and allows that gap. Now, actually I should have stayed kneeling down, because the next one we're going to do is also a kneeling one. Now, and it's also affecting the same part of the spine really. Now, we talked about pelvic tilt. So, leaning back with the hips or pelvis tilted forward, or having a flat back. Now, a good exercise to help counter that to a certain extent is what's called the cat-cow. Okay, so you go into two movements. So start again in that same position as we were in a moment ago. So knees and arms about shoulder width apart. And all you're going to do is you're going to go into that kind of the cat position first. So you're pushing your chest up as high as you can, or driving your head down in between your shoulders. And you're kind of bringing your hips forward at the same time. And then the opposite of that movement is to then tilt your hips forward, your pelvis forward, and actually put your head slightly backwards. So you're kind of trying to create a kind of a dip in your lower back. So you have to tilt your pelvis forward in order to do that, and actually create an unnatural S shape with your head at the top of the movement as well. So again, you go back into the cat. Again, keeping the core engaged all the time. And then pelvis forward. Okay, good. Now, if you're anything like me, doing that, well, as I was transitioning between the cat and then the cow, I definitely felt the vertebrae realigning and just clicking into a different position. So it's a great exercise to do, and one that you can get more flexible at, without a doubt. I'm not the most flexible person in the world. Too much ridiculously heavy weight training over the years has put paid to that, but you know, you can reverse those things. So, having done a bit of vertebral realignment in that way, and Dom, you'll laugh when I do this next one, is good old trunk twists. So, if you talk about vertebral realignment, then this is one of the best exercises you can possibly do. Keep your hips fairly square forward, they're going to rotate a little bit, trying to get your shoulders perpendicular to your hips effectively. And again, you probably will hear some crunching and cracking in that lower back as things just realign. Okay, 10 or so in each direction, keeping the core pulled in, ribs nice and high. It's a really, really good exercise. I absolutely love it. We do it as part of the warm up, and sometimes the warm will cool down in our crunch fit sessions. So really, really good one. Now, we're then going to focus on the hip area, really, because again, as with chest, that might be the area that's bringing your shoulders forward. It could be tightness in your hip flexors here that's actually bringing your hips forward or your pelvis forward. So it doesn't have to be about weight. You could have an overly curved spine just because these are too tight and inflexible. And on the contrary, these could be very weak or too strong. So if they're weak, that will help these be overpowering and pull the pelvis forward. If these are really strong, then actually it's going to pull the hips or the top of the pelvis backwards and give you a bit of a flat back. So focusing on exercises that give these muscles and the area a bit of a stretch is also really, really important. So we're going to focus on the hip flexors first, okay? Because if you think about, we do sitting down jobs, right? So those hip flexors are in a bent position all the time. So it wouldn't surprise me that most people have tightness across the front of their hips here. So one of the best stretches you can do to just ease that out is just a kneeling lunge. So take a good stride forward, stay quite upright to start with, but you're pushing your hips forward and down to create a really nice long stretch across the front of the hip flexor here. Okay. Now on the other leg, the supporting leg, because the leg is in that very bent position, you're getting a nice little stretch on the glute on the other leg. So while the hip flexor on this side is actually bent and in a bent position, this is getting a stretch out. Now you can accentuate that stretch as well by coming inside the knee and actually putting both hands on the floor in front of you. So you've got a bit of a double stretch going on. So you're really stretching the glute on the back here and actually also the hip flexor on the front. Again, just come back up to the top and let's change sides. Now if you can't feel the stretch on the hip flexor in the front, then you probably haven't taken a step forward far enough. Okay, you really need to be stretching out the pelvis as much as possible. So again, hips down and forward, use gravity to create the stretch on the front. And let's put our hands on the floor if you can. Some people can't actually reach the floor if their glutes are that tight, by the way. So if that's something you're struggling with, then that definitely tells you your glutes are a little bit too tight. So it's definitely an area to work on. Again, come back to the start position, Good. Good, good, good. So that's a kneeling lunge. Now, obviously that's hitting, like I say, the hip flexors and the glutes, but you've actually got very, very powerful tendons that run down the side of the body here, from the pelvis down to below the knee, in fact. It's called the IT band, iliotibial band, if you've already heard it. Runners have all sorts of problems with IT bands, i.e. if they're not flexible enough or not strong enough, the knees are going to be all over the shop and create lots of problems for them. But actually, because they're also attached to the pelvis, they are also the things that create or either create stability or instability in the hip area as well. So we're going to do a bit of an unusual stretch that allows this side of the body and the IT band going down the leg to just stretch out a little bit more. So we're going to cross one foot over the other, staying nice and upright, core pulled in as usual. Requires a bit of balance, this one, I'm afraid. Because what you're going to do, you're going to put your hands above your head, and then you're going to tilt towards the foot that's crossed over. So you're really creating a nice long stretch across here, across that side of the hip. Now, some people can have their foot way, way further over than I do. But again, a great stretch to do. Let's do the other side. So, cross the foot over, hand above the head nice and tall, and lean into the stretch. And again, you can get a good idea whether you've got one side that's a bit more flexible than the other. If you can lean one further one side than the other, then that's a good indicator. Always good to use a mirror for these sort of things. Okay, let's relax it off, give the legs a bit of a shake out. And I think we're on the last two things, because actually, although the lower part of the body is important for alignment as well, sort of ankles and knees, that kind of stuff, we're not going to worry too much about them today, because most of the alignment from ankles and knees point of view really derives from the hips and what's going on there. So we're really going to kind of do two more exercises that helps to kind of strengthen up the hip area rather than going any further down. Because these are the things that really help to keep the body alignment more so than the lower part of the body. So let's do some glute bridges then. So if it's about trying to make sure that these are strong enough to actually keep the pelvis in a neutral position, then just doing a little bit of work on them is going to be really important. So laying on the ground, get your heels quite close to your bottom, and then you're just going to raise up, and you're really going to be firing the glutes. So try and switch off the hamstrings. These should be almost kind of relaxed, really. So all the power in getting the hips high is coming from the glutes. Okay, so you're just going to hold that position again, pull all this in nice and tight. Okay, just relax that off for a second. And we're straight back in. Same movement. Again, really feeling the tension on the glutes. Just helps to give them a bit of conditioning and relax that off. Okay, so, and the final one is a glute stretch. It's because the exercise we did with the lunge earlier on was primarily for the hip flexors. Although we did affect the glutes a little bit, it was not the most effective stretch you can do for the glutes. So in order to keep these nice and flexible, there is a more effective one we can do. So again, lying flat, you're going to put your ankle across your knee, keep this wide knee out as far as you possibly can, and you're going to lift your leg off the ground and just grab behind the knee and just gently pull towards you. Now, when you should, as soon as you start pulling, you should, if you're trying to keep that knee out as far as you can, then you're definitely going to feel the stretch across the glutes here, predominantly the medial glutes. And you can actually use your elbow on that bent leg just to keep pushing it out to the side, to keep it nice, keep the stretch nice and correct. Now let's change legs. Okay, very good. Okay, relax that off. That's one of the most direct glute stretches you're going to get, frankly. There are others, but again, we haven't got time to do many more today, so we said we'd keep it about half an hour. So that's kind of it, really. So there's about, I don't know, 11, 12 different exercises there. Don't have to do them all at the same time. You can do them at periods during the day, but I do recommend doing a combination of these at least 2 or 3 times a day. And also not sitting down in the same position or standing in the same position for too long. Yeah. Move about. The bodies are made for moving, really. So that's another good thing to try and keep alignment, is not to try and sit in or stand in the same position for too long. Cool. Well, hopefully that's given you a few ideas at least. So yes. I have videoed this session, so it will go onto the channel, so you haven't got to remember everything I've said. But hopefully that's a useful few hints and tips to help with keeping good posture and alignment. The other thing to do is just keep thinking about it. As I said in the talk last week, if you pay attention to it, it will improve, because you'll be thinking about it, you'll be realigning your position, etc., etc. Even be vain while you're walking around with shots. Look at your reflection in the window. Am I standing up straight? Am I walking straight? You know, and that's not vanity as far as I'm concerned. That's just necessity to make sure that because if you're walking around town, you're probably carrying something. Therefore, your shoulders are probably down and forward, and what have we. So, you know, you're right to keep checking your position. So, excellent. Well, thank you for coming out, guys. Really appreciate it. And yeah, use the video as much as you can.